Oh, yeah, sorry. You know this. Lots of papers. So prior to being elected, okay, not experience. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are here live with Shontel Lewis, Candi CdeBáca, Shark, members of the news community, and more. I'm going to be joining the discussion here. Hopefully you can hear us. All notifications on silent. Mods, if you're in here, just know that this is a RTD chat with Shontel Lewis, Candi CdeBáca, and others here in our community. Hopefully you can hear us.
Thank you all for coming on Saturday. I know it's not easy to give up any time on Saturday, so I do appreciate your dedication to this conversation. My name is Shontel Lewis, Director for RTD's District B, and I really want to have this conversation to begin to talk about what equity looks like and which we'll get into, but also to talk more about the recent proposal about service for deductions and curtailment, because I think it's really important to hear from the community before we start seeing these proposals come through. So I'll stop talking. I'll let you all go around and introduce yourselves and how you're connected to this work, and then we'll hear from Mr. Michael Ford, the CEO of RTD. Shark.
Good morning. My name is Charmaine Shark Barrows. I grew up down the street here on the right. I'm involved in the community in all aspects of the community. Transportation is a very important issue for us. Transportation is a big issue in our community when we need to get out and go to work and do our everyday life, going to the hospital, going to the school. The prices of transportation have risen, and a lot of people with more than one child are being affected by it. The closures, we're being affected by all the closures. I prefer being on transportation on the public. Thank you. I wonder why. No. We'll get that. But anyway, I'm interested in what's happening with RTD and our transportation system. I think transportation should be offered to everybody and not just people that live up in Cherry Hills, and make it a feasible for people up there to come down into our beautiful town. I also have a grandson that started driving for RTD. It's recent. And so everything that consists about driving, I'm getting involved in as far as the union and what his rights are and how he's being treated. And I could already see the stress, and he's a young man, and I could already see the stress on him on his hours that he has to keep as a beginning to us drivers. So I'll be keeping on top of that too because of my relationship with the community and my family. That's why I'm here this early in the morning. A lot of jet lag that came in from boring Miami. Yeah. So here I am. But yeah, so I'm really interested to see what we're going to do as far as the transportation and the price of transportation in our communities.
My name is Candi CdeBáca. I'm the city council representative for this district. Born and raised in this community, grew up relying on public transportation. My biological dad drove the 44 for many years, and I'm super interested because I believe that we should be striving for completely free public transportation in Denver, and we want to see how we're relaxed so that we can get there. We're forming new Department of Transportation, and would love to see us move in that direction.
Hi, I'm Michael Ford. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at RTD. I'm really here to listen, answer questions. Obviously, we have a process that we need to go through, but part of that is listening to what folks are saying. We have a real issue with resources and being able to keep our services going, provide reliable service, address our really most important folks, which are our operators in our place. They've been working very hard 6 days a week for the last 4 to 5 years. It's not acceptable. We've got to do something about that while balancing the needs of the community. So we obviously have a lot of work to do with outreach and engagement, but hearing from people, figuring out what we need to do to help stabilize the service so you can depend on it. Our drivers can be safe and feeling comfortable and respected and getting the place that they need to continue the quality of life that they need to enjoy as an RTD employees. So again, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, but that's why I see myself here today. Other places in the CT, I'm sure throughout the system.
My name is Jared Bynum. I'm a student of urban planning at the University of Colorado, Denver. And I'm also a community and environmental justice advocate. And I have an interest in this work. I use public transit every single day. I think everybody should. And I'm also concerned about the conditions of the RTD operators, as well as these members of the community are looking at regarding, like our taxes and how we can band together to support these folks, but support inclusive investment.
That's good. And I'm wanting to honor class F, so.
Okay, thank you. My name is Candi. I ride the bus every day. I don't have a car, so I get around on the bus. Every day I take either the 10 or the 15, with the 15 and the 12 to get here today. I'm involved in this because I'm a bus rider. My friends are bus riders. Lots of my friends are folks with disabilities, people who use the bus to get around, who use wheelchairs and use the bus to get around. Being of 19, made the buses accessible, laid their bodies on the line to make sure that this bus system was accessible. And so we need to make sure that, as well as honoring the time and the work that our drivers are putting in, we also need to make sure that the system is accessible for folks who need it, who are folks who are poor and folks who are with disabilities. So that's why I'm here.
I'm Brian Loma. I've been riding RTD since I moved here as a transplant, student of graduate of Auraria Community College and Metropolitan State University, and where I have a degree in sustainable infrastructure and practices. I came to Colorado to focus on water, recycling, and the way we take care of our earth. And as my roles in the community, I've gone from everything from being an employer of over 100 staff required to take mass transit daily to communicate with their customer base or their target markets around the metro area, to an activist who videotapes the interactions and what's going on. I'm part of a community that got RTD to take away their practice of mandating shoes to be able to get on a bus. And I have a lot of people that I've communicated with over the last 5 years that I'm hoping to bring some of that knowledge and experience to the table in these continued discussions. Because Denver is one of the highest, if not the highest, fares. And as a growing community, I don't think we can afford to keep the climate of single modal transportation, cars driving, and a growing community in the climate crisis that we're in.
My name is Chase Woodruff. I'm a reporter with Westward. I'm also a transit writer, but just here at this.
My name is Chris Nicholson. I live downtown that way. We got here this morning. I'm a transit rider because I gave up my car when we got to Colorado, so I use the RTD or transit transit system works, the less I have to spend on Uber.
My name is Louis Housley. I'm a Fuller operator and second generation operator. My father started driving RTD back in 1982 and retired somewhere around 94 because of health issues. So I think the reason why I'm here to bring perspective is I'm a multi-generation. I've seen RTD, been in the Platte Division, been in Alameda Division when it was still open. And I've seen the changes through the years. And I'm now working 15 years with RTD. And I can tell you that even as a 15-year operator, if I have a day off during the week, I'm going to get mandated to be here 6 days a week. And if I'm working night shifts, I'm going to be mandated 6 days a week because of the labor shortage. And I want to try to bring some ideas to the table, and try to get the company back to a family atmosphere so that we can keep people that we are hiring, because we don't have a problem hiring, we have a problem keeping the people that we do hire. Because we also have senior people retiring at the same time as these new people are saying, hey, this isn't for me. So RTD has a high turnaround because of that. So one of the reasons why I stayed around so long was because of the pension plan that was offered and the health care plan that was offered at the time. But you can go into more detail as we go down the line.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I ride the bus, I walk, I drive, I used to work downtown and I took the bus every day. And so that was great. I even took the bus to meetings and would figure out how I was going to get around. Unfortunately, some of the lines that I used to depend on, they've been cuts in services and stops. So we had some concerns with that. I have a different job now, and so unfortunately for me to ride the bus would take a 3-hour round trip a day, which I can jump in my car for about 50 minutes to maybe, if I had a lot of traffic, maybe an hour. So that is always like a concern. Is I would prefer to take transit, but the connections and sometimes the number of connections that are required, make it where I can't, get around. And I also don't have the luxury at the same time to be vehicles. A lot of people, if you have a job, you sometimes need to go to meetings if you don't have a vehicle to take at work, because you don't work for an employer that has fleet vehicles, you need to have a car. So we just sort of have to figure things out. So I'm concerned about that. We are also want to know a little bit more about bus rapid transit. We're concerned that, how is that going to get funded? How is that going to be implemented, especially with the current challenges that RTD is facing, that we need to figure a better path forward. And so those are kind of like my concerns, hoping that we can figure out better connections. How do we retain drivers? I mean, are we not, how do we ensure there's a living wage so that people can take these jobs and not work 6 days a week? That contributes to safety. I mean, you have a very highly you're responsible for the safety of all the people. And in your vehicle, if you're a bus or you're a rail operator, it seems to me that we shouldn't be pushing you to the limit physically. That's not good for us as a community. It's not good for the drivers themselves. So those are just some of the concerns we have.
Sure. I'm Jeff. Hey everyone, my name is I'm an attorney, and as a former teacher and someone who's worked in community organizing, I think that one of the biggest challenges that I see that my community and my former students face was access to quality transportation options. And so that's fine.
I'm Nate Miner. I cover RTD and transportation for Colorado Public Radio, like Chase, and also here. And I take the 12 and the E and the F a lot.
My name is Angela Williams. I'm the recording secretary for ATU 1001. So I'm also a bus operator. I once lived in this just my job, not just my position. I came to my position because I was greatly concerned with the direction that both the company and the union are going. The proposed service cut does nothing to address any, to keep retention of the operators. So I'm here to hopefully speak out and offer viewpoints that have been listened to for my past 3 years being in office.
I'm Moody Jackson. I'm a bus operator out of Platte down the street. I've been driving a little over a year, and I'm just basically here to be the voice for my fellow drivers and train operators who can't be here today.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. My name is Ed Sandoval. I'm with Atlantis Adapt, the Denver chapter of Adapt. And I'm here because I want to make sure that RTD hears from the disability community.
So I'm going to turn it over to Michael Ford. He's just going to open up the conversation, kind of tell us about what's happening at RTD, his lens and his experience, and then we'll open it up to you all for your comments, concerns, and questions. And I'm here to listen as well.
Again, I'm Michael Ford, the COO here. I've been here about 18 months. Prior to that, I was in Detroit, CEO there, and but my background is in transportation over the last 35 years. Originally from Seattle, Portland area, and that's kind of where I got my background in transportation. What I want to talk to you a little bit about today is just we've got a real problem. It's not been said, or it hasn't been said to maybe the extent it has needed to be said. We have been mandating operators for a number of years, working 6 days a week. That's just not sustainable. That's not right, and we need to do something about that. We do a lot of recruiting. There's a lot of numbers in the statistics. You can see how many people we've brought in on the rail and the bus, but we're not able to keep them because they come into an environment where they're working all the time. And with all the choices that are out there and the competition and the low unemployment, people have other choices to go to other places. So that creates a problem. I think the other issue is that we have probably about 30-year-olds in our resources in terms of operators. What's going to happen for the next generation? And I think that's a big problem. I think the average operator is around 49 to 51 years old. Who's coming behind them? Who's going to be there to continue this operation? So I bring that to complicate the problem, to say it's not just getting more people, but how do we attract other people that we maybe haven't looked into? So we've got that issue. I mean, I can get into the statistics. We have also people that are on L&I or OJI, which means they're off work because they're either sick, tired, injured themselves, and we have about 171,000 hours of that, which equates to another 82 people. Those are people that we have to backfill to do their work because they're not able to work with us. So those are some of the challenges. Right now, we're out, we're talking to folks. We need to do something. We need to stabilize that. And I talk a lot about the operators, but also want to be clear that this doesn't impact the community. I mean, even if we are running at 98 to 99% on time, or we're getting our buses out there, we're still missing people. We're still dropping trips on the bus and rail side. And if I have my trip missed, that affects me, it affects my employment, it affects a lot of the things and I'm very sensitive to the comments on the disabled community and what we need to do to strengthen our relationships, strengthen our service, making sure that we're doing everything we can to be following through the regulations and rules and just the courtesy and the respect that everybody should be afforded. So again, you can read through the materials. The bottom line is that we're really struggling. We need help. We need to look at different ways to bring people in, but more importantly, to keep them there. I've heard the working conditions are of concern. People feel that they're nitpicked. I'm just going to lay it out there because I've been in conversations with union officials for the last several months. In fact, yesterday, entire good 6 hours of my day was just talking to operators, talking to them about what their concerns were, trying to find out what I can do to be helpful. Some people are just tired of being tired, and that's frustrating, because you're trying to extract what is it that they're feeling. I mean, it's not just about working, it's about their family lives, how their jobs are affect them as people every single day, and trying to be sensitive to that issue. So what we're out right now doing is listening to folks. The board has directed us to go out, talk, hear. We have not finalized any plan. I want to be very clear about that. This is an organic to take in consideration all the needs and all the concerns that are out there to formulate something. I mean, nobody really wants to reduce service, but at the same time, how do we stabilize so we can get to a point where we can be more reliable and drivers can get their time off? If there's other ways that we can bring people in, change the working conditions to a point where people are feeling more comfortable. We're trying to do a lot more with communication, with additional resources out there in the garages, but that's still in play. We still got to do more in that area. So I'll be the first to admit, we are short. We have one assistant manager to 300 operators at each garage. So that creates not enough interaction, not enough proactive steps. So there are resource issues that we're trying to deal with right now internally to try to deal with some of the concerns that people are feeling, being nitpicked to death about their uniforms or about their shoes. Things like that are also, I think, playing into some of the concerns, because what I hear is not just the mandating, and I'll be honest too, I hear it's, hey, I do want the overtime, but I want to be able to choose when I work. You are mandating me, and that's creating problems. I want to be able to bring in that extra money, but at my expense, my time, and when I choose to do that. So is there something more that we can do around that? So I can assure you that we are challenged, but we are trying to work through that, working with the union, meeting with them, trying to answer their questions, from issues with the bathrooms and being able to get time to use the bathroom, to biohazards on the buses, or just to deal with problem employees that are causing them issues. So I'm not bashful for saying these are issues out there. We talk about it. I follow up. We're going after the concerns so we can address that. The service itself right now, again, we're not here today to say here's what we're doing, because we're not there. We haven't made those provisions yet. We are here to listen, to take in concerns, and to see how that impacts what we can do. Obviously, there's financial issues as well. We just had a budget report at the last meeting about our revenue projections and what's come in, and that's also affected the agency as a whole as well. I can go through other issues, but I just want to kind of get more of the concern and work with you to figure out what we can do to rise ourselves and get back on track and rise some balance, stability for our customers, and stabilization for our operators.
So one of the things that I am I care about this issue in many ways. One, how are we providing the best service for those who are on public transportation, but also you talked about us bus operators, and I know a bus operator very personally, and so when we talk about the impact on people's lives, that is near and dear to my heart. I really care about that. When I ran, I talked about love and humanity, and I'm doing what the right thing to do. So I want to hear from all of you, because we did receive this potential proposal. The idea was in terms of curtailment or reduction of services, but maybe you all have other ideas in which we might be able to take back to RTD that could be implemented or at least explored. So just open the floor to all of you about what you think might be some good next steps, some things that we can do.
I took some time out and I asked not RTD employees, but people out there on the street, including my own son, which would be a third generation, if he would choose to come to RTD. A forklift operator worked about $18 an hour for 30 years. Why did he stay with the same company? He had his health care paid for. He didn't have to fight over getting time off. And it was a family atmosphere that he was working on. My son I asked him, and it's about the same thing. He's working barely over minimum wage at a warehouse. But he's staying there because it's a family atmosphere. He gets his time off when he needs it. He gets vacation, and he gets his health care taken care of. One of my suggestions would be to listen to the union and your members, which have proposed to you ways to not lose jobs, but to keep jobs. Right now, let's change this from a job to a career. Let's offer something to the people coming that they're not going to get anywhere else. And you're going to keep people. One thing I would say as an operator is give those people time to work. Because right now, when you come in as a new operator, you're put down at the bottom of the run. And you're left to fill whatever is available. So if there was, because you're talking about removing jobs, I'm saying put more jobs out there so that when new people come on, they have an option to vote something, even if it's just 5 hours a day. Give them something that they can vote so that they can stay on some kind of schedule.
Just want to follow up. So more flexibility that you're saying?
More flexibility and more hours.
More hours
Of work available. Because when you first come in as a new operator, if you've never driven a bus and never been in the atmosphere, it's a culture shock. Okay, RTD does a great job of training you how to operate a bus. Then they put you in a wheel with a seasoned operator on revenue training. So you're out there in the public, and your first weeks in the bus, you're getting hostile reactions to some customers because you're running late, which I understand that if we're running late, you're running late to your work, and the boss doesn't take RTDs run late as an excuse. So that creates a hostile environment. And there's some routes out there where the attitude of the customers are not a positive attitude. When you talk to the average person out there on Colfax and ask them what do they think about an RTD employee, you're not going to get a positive response. So as a new operator, they're going into this hostile environment. And I know that RTD wants to cut the security program that might go meter. You really should listen to him and increase his budget by 12% instead of reducing it. Because he's going to give us tools where trained security officers are able to back the operator instead of having a street supervisor come, which may not be and probably is not trained to deal with the situation the same as a trained police officer. So let's get back to the new operator coming on. His first choice as a full-time operator is day board or night board. Okay, I'm going to explain that a little bit for everybody. The boards are set up so that if a person is on OJI or calls in sick, they're a pool of workforce that RTD has that we're able to call on and put a driver in that seat so that you're not missing that bus. And there's no set schedule to that. So one day you might work 3 hours and then have to come back in about 2 hours and then work 6. But no employee works more than 13 hours. That's because of the contract and negotiation that the union did, which was a real benefit.
Can I interject to that one point? A 13-hour spread day could only result in 8 hours of pay.
Wait, what?
Could only result in 8 hours of pay. You only work, if you work 8 hours, I mean, you might get a split differential, but it could only be 8 hours of pay.
Especially if you're working on a split, because your split time, let's say if you got off at like 11, then your next run doesn't start till maybe like about 2. So then you may actually have 7 hours and 55 minutes actually driving the bus. You might only get paid 8 hours and 15 minutes for it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela. If you're on the board and you're set on report, you're waiting for something to happen, and nothing happens for 3 hours, they ask you to come back in 2 hours, and they give you a 5-hour run. Is that operator given that differential, or is that only given to people that has voted split shifts?
That operator is given the differential if it's their day off.
If it's not the day off, then they're not getting it.
You know, they get there, it's like a split.
What's the
I mean,
point?
it's split shift. But the split shift, you know, you have busier times of day. So there are times of day that RTD needs more operators. You know, going to work, going to school.
That's usually 6 in the morning to 9 or 3 to 6. Those are peak hours.
Because see, I actually work all I choose to work. And I might take my first piece, I might only work like 2 hours. Like I think this boat, I do almost 3 hours on my first piece. Then I have a 2-hour split. And then I pull a bus out and I go to the mountains. Because the mountains only operate in the morning and then in the afternoon. And it starts at a certain time. So that's what basically how working the split is.
But there are more splits than there need to be. There are runs out there where you can have 4 or 5 operators doing a route that really could be split into 2. And it would, I mean, you're still getting the same coverage, but what you're doing is you're giving those 2 operators longer hours for that day.
Right, but just a point of clarification, the last contract, we went to 65% of straight 8s on the weekdays and 75% on weekends. So I just want to make that clear. The other thing I'd also make clear, I mean, that was a result of negotiations to try to do that, going from a 13.5-hour to a 13-hour day. The other thing that I want to be clear too is we have a union contract that we have to adhere to. So there needs to be some flexibility in how we approach these examples or new ideas, particularly with new people coming on, because you have senior people, you have junior people, and there are differences in how that is applied in terms of what they can bid for and not bid for. So I just want to be clear that in this discussion, this is a discussion that we need to be engaging with the union to look at different ways, flexibility. It's not just us moving this in one direction. It's got to be a collaborative process for the union being able to work through that based on some of the comments on here.
And I'm going to interject again regarding new people coming in. We have worked with RTD on and off as far as new people coming in, being able to vote the available runs that are open, so they're not thrown into the extra board and not knowing what they're doing. So we are trying to work with RTD, you know, because I mean, that plays a huge role in retention. You're out there and I was watching videos yesterday of someone who got in an accident. There again, another issue, we've been arguing with RTD for years on mirror safety. It's not going to cost that much money to move the mirror on those R-Tricks up higher. So left-hand turns. So this girl's not only, she hits someone making a left-hand turn, she's got her trailblazer in hand because she doesn't know the route. So there's a lot of things going on. So there are issues like that. I don't know where I was going with that. I was just saying there.
I want to kind of piggyback off of my fellow driver over here. Like our time, because we spend the majority of our life literally at work. I'm one of those drivers that, of course, I get mandated because I'm still so new. But in order for me to help out the rest of everybody, the community, the job, I work 7 days a week. And I will do that for months and months on the time. We can't get our vacations and things like that. Last year alone, like I said, this is my first year driving. I missed my daughter's whole senior year and I could barely get off to make a graduation. We have operators who put in for vacation, and they can't get it, they get denied. Like, it's almost like we're being punished for the shortage of work, but we're tired, we're exhausted. I'm currently out on OJI for so much day with the wheelchair, and it's put me out of work for now. I'm going on 3 weeks.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. And just along this week, there's been numerous incidents, but nobody really takes our safety into consideration. At least 10 operators in the past 5 days have either been assaulted or almost assaulted. We can't get the proper security that we need because I guess we don't have it. We can make a call and it takes hours for somebody to get to us. And that's a huge problem. And that's one of the main reasons why people can't stay. Because there's no support. It's like we're literally out there by ourselves. And we're like extremely stressed and pulled in.
That's why
I'm sorry.
What is OJI?
On the job injury.
Chris and Brett.
Sure. So I want to ask about the service cuts. There's obviously, I don't actually know the number and amount. I
I just want to be clear, we have any service cuts right now.
But we're talking
We're talking about it, we're trying to formulate a plan.
Sure.
There's nothing that's been put out,
There's no framework yet. that we're
Not yet,
working
because
on.
we've got to get a lot of it.
So let me ask the question slightly differently. In the conversations that you've had about potential choices that we could make, to what degree is RTD considering making the cuts to optimize fare box recovery to improve the efficiency of the system, and to what degree and what other factors, equity, I know Shontel raised with me, are being sort of included in that discussion? Efficiency is really important to me, but there are obviously other factors, and so I want to get a sense from you how much of this is going to improve the system, and how much of, you get the question.
Well, yeah, I think we have to look at the system as a whole and making sure that everybody's being treated fairly in the process. We have what we call standards that they're adopted by the board about, how a service performs. What you might have, I think what you have in front of you is that document there, and everything in the box is what we consider performing very well.
Okay.
Everything outside of that box is somewhat of a problem.
So that's what we're looking at.
So when you look at it, those are kind of the trade-offs, if you will, in the sense that that's what's meeting the standard, what's outside the box is not meeting the standard. That doesn't mean that those go away. It's just that when you look at how the service is actually doing, it's meeting an identified objective depending on the type of route, whether it's a 40-foot bus, a 30-foot bus, flex ride, rail systems, whatever. So that's what that refers to. We do an annual report every year. We kind of jokingly call it the Becker report. He's our senior manager of service planning. And it really details in depth all our routes, how they're performing, and how they're meeting the standard and the criteria that have been set.
And just a very, very quick follow-up. How much cuts do we need to make, and how is that quantified?
Well, right now, I think we have to still gather more information. I'm not prepared to sit here and say we're at this threshold right now, because that just would not be a fair statement. Some of it also may be contingent on some of the work with FTA in terms of our rail system. There are requirements that we're mandated to provide a certain level of service. Some of those services aren't performing where they could. Are there opportunities there? Even if there were, we would still need to get some support from the FTA on some of that.
Which is the Federal Transit Administration.
I'm sorry, yes.
Appreciate it.
And also, to the experiences of operators, for me, that's something about the level of cuts. How do we improve the quality of life for both our riders and our operators?
I just wanted to speak to one other thing about the vacations. Operators they can bid vacations. They get bid vacations. I think what you're talking about is if I want time off.
Well, see, I wasn't able to bid vacation because, like I say, I'm only a year in.
Okay.
And I'll explain vacations to you. We are able to bid vacations, but we're also able to leave a few days, a week or two open, and for flexibility. We don't always know what the day holds for us. So I leave any time open, chances are very good I'm not going to get it. So if, like you said, your child is participating in something, you don't always know when there's going to be a school play, a school meeting, or someone gets hurt or something, so now you ask for days off, you're not going to get it. In fact, you're just going to get paid at the end of the, in the end of April when we start our new vacation year, because most operators are not getting it.
And I'm not arguing your point, I'm just saying, I know that we do everything we can to try to get people off, but I wanted to make a distinction between vacation that you do bid on, that you do put into the books that you do get, versus I want to take time off immediately and seeing how we can navigate that. That's a little different.
I have something to bring up in regards to, because you brought up the budget and wanting to cut, and security is on there, it's a huge issue for us. There are ways that RTD can cut. RTD is extremely top-heavy, extremely top-heavy. You're proposing cutting budgets 10% from every department, but I find that a little disingenuous from RTD, because, there's 4 brand new positions within RTD that were just filled. You don't create new positions at the same time you're cutting positions. RTD has been around since, 1971? They now have a labor relations generalist. What does a labor relations generalist do, and why now? He just started. Remember, he came from our group. And you give it to a mechanic. So what does this mechanic know about labor relations? I'm curious. A brand new salaried position. I was in the information center yesterday. You have 48 operators. You have 1 manager, you have 1 lead supervisor, and you have 5 supervisors over those 48 people. That is top heavy.
I also want
Angela, I will say, one of that there are other directors on the board who are looking at FTEs, because we have to figure out where the opportunities are. Well, just to let you know that aside from myself, we've asked for support to look at the FTEs. I appreciate you raising that.
And I also said there's a lot of unfilled positions that have been vacant for a long time, so those are also being looked at. So when you compare the ratio, sometimes you have to look at, some of those positions haven't been filled, that's why the number may be skewed. So I just want to be clear about that as well.
And I've got a question. Are the amounts of these cuts also in negotiations?
I would say it's all around the
I think
negotiation
it's
because
all
we don't
around.
have an amount yet. And that's why we're here, to really get the experiences of everyone, so that when we're going back and thinking about these proposals, how do we make sure everyone's represented in that?
I think I was in stack.
Oh, you sure were. Yeah, Brian and, sorry.
Do you want to finish your thought there, sir?
No, I just want to say, as we sit here and talk about potential cuts, we're also needing to think about how do we bring people in and stabilize. So I don't want to get so focused on this is just about cuts. This is about RTD the next 50 years, right? We're going to 50 years now, but what are we going to do? We're going to change things differently, because that mandating the need for people and the new people are still going to be an issue. And we got to be thinking about that. If this is a potential cut, that's just to stabilize for a given period of time. It doesn't address our future and where we need to go in our service. So I just want to be clear about that.
Thanks for raising that. I appreciate that.
And I don't know if I'm the only one that's picking up on this. Maybe I'm misperceiving, but I've heard that drivers are working 6 days a week, and new drivers, I essentially feel, aren't getting 40-hour shifts as a minimum. And so just what I'm picking up on is that one of the blatantly obvious things to me is that if you have seasoned, experienced workers being forced to work 6 days a week, and the investment in new hires, because that's really where you're at, right? You burn your cost in training an employee, and if they don't give you a minimum amount of time working on the job, then all you're doing is burning money training new people. So if you spend the money to invest in a new trainee, then they should get a minimum amount of hours right out the door, so that they're confident that they're earning into their long-term benefits, that they're establishing work patterns that are 6 days a week with regularity, and establishing some kind of pattern. But patterns is one of the things that I recognize with RTD that is often off, because as a rider, I am versed in calculating 3 or 4 transfers and stops to get from point A to point B. But not even Google algorithms factor this, right? So I know, for example, that if I want to get to the 15 East Side Colfax, coming from the far side of Golden on the W or whatever, right? I can transfer the 16 at the Federal Center and then cross over to catch the L, and it might actually save me 20 minutes of my ride based on transfers and stuff. There's so many times that I've gotten off at a station, and if the trains had just paired for a minute, I'd have been on the next train instead of waiting 20 minutes for the next one, right? So when you look at this, the effectiveness of the operation, I'm concerned that you're not focusing on the ability for customers to find their use to be efficient and beneficial. I cannot stress that if people are saying my single unit vehicle that could cost me $20 to park downtown, plus the gas and the insurance and all that other stuff, is more financially advantageous than being somebody like many of us in this room who own no vehicles, right? And I say that because the reality is that I don't spend $5,000 a year on gas and insurance and the environmental destruction of being a single occupant traveler, right? So making the ease of service so that it's beneficial for the working class is one of the things that I'm concerned about. And I value, as somebody who works in the homeless communities, and when I'm in a position to hire, effort to make sure that a third of my workforce is at risk or at that stage to get them up, that you're going to have frustration and violence of words from people who aren't in the best circumstances, right? It's a bigger issue because when you're sleeping at one spot and traveling to get food at another and traveling to get your next meal and trying to get housing and running around, that's a mental health crisis in and of itself. And people who are dependent on mass transit to solve their housing and their life needs are in a mental health crisis, and your drivers aren't supposed to be mental health counselors and all of this stuff, right? But I get how real it is, right? When I do a lot of political action work and making sure that people on their first day on the job are given bus passes that we as a company pay for, so they don't have to worry about how they're going to get to their job the next day. Like, that's the level of reality that I'm talking about in the work that we do. So somebody just getting on a job and doing all that, like and I've seen it all ways, right? I've seen badly mocked monthly passes, and I don't understand why people do that, right? It's $114 a month for my monthly pass. It's $180 if I pay for a ticket every day. Obviously, I want my monthly pass. I'm glad it's finally on my phone. But it's about balancing it all out, right? Meeting the needs. When I put one of the most expensive statewide ballot initiatives on the state ballot in 2018, if I didn't leave my job by 6:30 at night, maybe it was 7:30, my commute was 2 hours from the couch that I was sleeping on at somebody's house, right? I finally got to move to a route, right, where there was a route every half hour. But you have the bus lines or the train lines going in one direction, pretty much. The crosses are catastrophically horrible, right? So when people at businesses on the 16th Street Mall or downtown Denver who would have to figure out bus or Uber, right? It's $20 to get to Aurora or the outskirts at 2:00 in the morning, and you're competing with the people who are drinking, right? At the same time, the person took a bus there, or because they got their shift is in the daytime. So is it worth them to have a monthly pass when it's only $3 a day that they're able to, they actually need to spend part way because they have to spend $20 to get on the return trip home? All of these things factor into this problem, right? Because I think that the answer is more people ride more buses, more mass transit, and you don't have to worry about having enough funding for your drivers and effectiveness of balancing the shifts because schedules are steady and consistent, right? Also, like, why are Lakewood police officers getting on trains at any time they choose to check fare and IDs? RTD already has paid staff for that. Is it an effective use to pay a police officer whose wages are probably twice that of an RTD security guard? Fair, and I use that respectfully because Lakewood police officers have to have a degree to work as a police officer. So when you're subsidizing those employees at a higher rate, you're wasting money, right? I mean, that's just what I observe. And when I see fare checkers out on a Broncos day, there's 40 of them to man the stations, right? But then there's nobody at a Pepsi Center game or anything. And why? Because for some reason the Broncos negotiate or have some kind of plan to organize events. But when you have 12 concerts on a Saturday night and I think you're going till 2 o'clock in the morning, you don't have the negotiated extras. The Pepsi Center's on the W line, on the E line, on the C line, or T line. I mean, there's a variety of them right there, right? That go out all directions. And if the Pepsi Center gets out at 10 o'clock and it's a 10:15 or 10:45, because that's when the station is, right? Nobody's encouraged to take mass transit, or less people are. Does that make sense? Because I mean, I've been to Garth Brooks at the Mile High, and there was no extra accommodation as if there was for a football game. So everybody's paying for parking and they're driving because they know that it's going to be a pain. There's not extra consideration for the events, right? And so it's the same logical thing. If there's a Nuggets game or an Avalanche game, or if there's multiple events going on, I mean, at New Year's Eve, there's not even a confidence whether or not we're running trains extra after midnight. And I've documented that. So that's my big spiel on a whole bunch of stuff.
Can I interject on that real quickly? So we're at time, and so I want to be respectful of all of your time, so just letting you know, and also Candi. So I just want to be respectful.
At Garth Brooks, they did have extra service. The issue is they didn't advertise it.
Yes, and that's the thing, right? Is that we don't know these things in advance effectively, right?
I know people who work.
Okay.
Service.
I remember staying in the rain, and we caught the last train, and the people that were standing there, and the computers, everything, next train is half an hour. So we did not know that, and it was not clear even at the station, because I was there that night. I do remember it.
Just quickly, I will just say that we do work with the events people because we need to know what the crowd sizes are going to be to try to address that. So it's not like we don't work or we don't have statistics. We have a monthly calendar of events that are going on throughout the whole Denver area. So we do try to size our fleet and our resources and our responses to the needs of whatever comes, whether it's Garth Brooks, the Rolling Stones, or whatever. Sometimes we have had some shortages, but in these particular cases, this is an ongoing thing every month where we get a calendar of what the events are, how many people were expected, how many tickets were sold, and what we're going to need to do to accommodate that. So I want to be clear about that.
Then as a follow-up, and if I may, I might suggest more effective relations with those agencies and entities, so that if I'm getting a ticket through Access at a place in the venue, that I'm notified that Fiddler's Green's the other one, right? So many times we don't know what trains are running, and if the last train is at 10:30 and I gotta wait, I gotta Uber it from there. It's a lived experience for me. So, but I know there's more time, so I apologize.
We are embarking on reimagine RTD, and that's going out there and hearing what people have to say about the system, re-looking at how we deliver service, what do we need to do differently, how are we going to move forward in the next 50 years? So that's a whole nother effort that's going on as we speak right now to address connections, to address efficiencies, the service, where's it going, where's it not going, how are we accommodating people. So I'm not going to spend all the time on it. I just wanted to let you know that that is something that you'll hear a lot more about.
That was just like, kind of like what I wanted to address, is it feels like there's a fundamental flaw in the system and how we operate and what you're trying to do. It made sense maybe in the 70s when we started the system, but we're a city that's trying to compare itself to coastal cities, and global cities don't rely on a regional transit system for their mass transit needs. There are different layers to it. And so I'm wondering, like, is there some analysis of global cities that do mass transit well, and do we understand what the pain points are and what the fundamental flaws are? Because it feels like we're in crisis mode right now, and at the same time, people are demanding an increased level of public transportation. And so we are struggling to barely meet the bare minimum right now. There's really not even a conversation happening about how do we go above and beyond. How do we negotiate autonomous vehicles coming on the road? How do we negotiate the shared ride services and work together? How do we layer those things on top of each other for efficiency in a way that meets everybody's needs, but also lifts the burden off of the regional transit district, because you can't serve everybody the way that we're doing it.
And just to, I don't want to take off the air out of it. I talked about the regional or the reimagining, but we just had a person from Portland come out, Jared Walker, to talk about service and how it gets implemented in different areas. The reimagine, I think, will help us with that, because we're not the same as what we were when we started. And how do we do that?
I can testify.
I'm sorry?
Said I can testify.
Okay. And so to your point, we have to emerge. And again, we can't be all things to all people, but we need a seamless system. So how do we connect? If you're a private carrier, or if you're an Uber, or you're a Lyft, or you're a scooter, it all needs to work together, maybe through a mobile app or a paid system. So we're very conscious of looking at those things, and I believe that's where the reimagined stuff will really start taking a lot of flavor, because we realize that what we currently have may not be where we need to be, and obviously for other reasons we'll need to make some adjustments.
So to piggyback off my city councilwoman's phenomenal comments, because you're absolutely right. I live like right in the heart of downtown. I think I'm about a 2-minute walk from 6 different transit lines. My building has 308 units in it, so about 500 people. I would guess no more than about 2 have RTD monthly passes. Everybody drives. And that's insane. And part of the reason why is that having moved down here from Boulder, where many residential buildings up there, as well as many office buildings up there, had eco passes, there are almost none here in Denver. There is very little, if any, deployment of eco passes here in Denver. I don't know almost any of my friends who have them here. I knew a ton of people in Boulder. And quite honestly, when I first moved down here, I looked into it, I spoke to some people, and what I heard, and this may be true or maybe not, is that it was bad for you guys financially to have more people having eco passes, and so you didn't do it. That's what I heard from people, is that RTD was not pushing eco passes in Denver because it would mean a reduction in income. That is a perverse incentive that addresses exactly what you're talking about, Candi, that we have a transit system here in some of the places where we have the best transit access that doesn't encourage members of the Denver population to become riders. It doesn't incentivize them to have monthly passes automatically. And that's because it's a different system and different needs here in Denver than it is for the
And big cities don't do eco passes. Like my Smart Trip card in DC, it's a refillable card.
Yeah.
They don't do that. Your Metro Pass in the subway in New York doesn't do that. Mexico City doesn't do that. Paris doesn't do that. Tokyo doesn't do that. it's a refillable card, but the rates are incentivized to make sense. Like a $9 trip to get on at 40th in Colorado to go downtown or the airport doesn't make sense. Like I could drive that and park for $9.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was trying to say that it's less logical because my belief is that the combination of insurance, fuel, parking, and maintenance of the vehicle is catastrophically more. But my time is the difference. Somebody else said 3 hours or whatever, right? Versus a 2 hour, hour and a half. That 90 minutes is what? So for some people, that's worth $50 to $100.
And survival in the short term is survival in the long term. We're talking survival in the long term of the planet. Survival in the short term is getting my ass to work so I can get my money, so I can put food on the table and pay the rent. And people don't have the luxury of time.
And you brought up some interesting issues by the passes from the other cities. A complication here at RTD is we have the most complicated fare structure in the nation. It affects the passengers who ride, so you're losing ridership. It puts the operator in danger because they're having to enforce all this stuff. They're having to ask for more than one ID. No, let us pay our fare. Why are our fare box so ancient? Why do we not have updated fare boxes? So you're doing budgets based on bad data for fare boxes that don't even tell you if you put in a 1, a 5, a 10. Other cities have those things. We do not. So there again, you have faulty budgets. All of that stuff has to be dealt with. The fares are huge, huge. The number one reason for an operator to be assaulted is a fare issue. Someone spits on you, you're going to want to get up and punch him. You should not lose your job.
That's what we go through. Like, I was on my mandate day and I was doing the 16, which is West Colfax. And the new procedure with service animals and just animals in general. The man's dog was not on leash. And he ran back and he came pretty damn close to hitting me. And I had no way to defend myself or to defend myself for the fear of losing my job. And I should not have to be fearful of losing my job because somebody decides that they want to commit a felony.
Again, I'm not trying to get into the details, but there are resources there. There are people you can call to get the help that you need. That's part of the process.
But that's the thing. We know the procedure, but we have to get it. Like, I can call for dispatch. Dispatch may take 20, 30 minutes to call back, and then it's another hour before somebody shows up.
So you're not getting the response time?
No, we're getting like, it's almost like we're not taken seriously. Like, if we call for dispatch, and I get it, it's only maybe like 5 of them for like all of Colorado, for trains, buses, contractors, bus staying, aero, like they do it all. And when we really, really, really need it, we can't get that time that we need. And that's why a lot of our operators are quitting, because they've been assaulted, they're badly hurt, and we're not taken seriously. Like, our issues are major. Like, our safety is major. We should not have to leave out the house and be of not going back home safely and in one piece.
And Mike is working on in our security department.
Are you part of the Saturday meetings?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm involved in a couple different, whatever what you call it, focus groups. But in that, they are trying to work on a system where if something's happened, even before it progresses to that point where you're swinging, somebody's swinging at you, you can push a button and have a live feed to a security officer, trained security officer, so that they can see every camera in the bus and what's going on, and they can send the response to it before it even escalates to that point. Right now, even if it takes dispatch 5 minutes to answer her call, can you hold your breath in 5 minutes? 2 minutes? Probably not. In 2 minutes, you know what happened to her or me on that one. And sitting in that seat, RTD has created conflicts at the fare box by changing fare structures, by changing how people pay. Let's rewind time a little bit. Back when I'm from Boulder, so I'm going to give examples from Boulder. So transfer from Boulder to Denver was the B. Okay? And they had a local fare and an express fare, and then they had the regional fare. Well, then you guys did a great thing. You removed the express and compensated the local and gave a little bit more distance. So there was this local and regional. Then you added, now recently you added, discount is one price, youth is another price, and you gotta have ID cards for this to receive all that. Because when you come on and you only pay $1.60, I'm like, is there a reason why you're paying a discounted fare? Oh, I gotta show you my ID. Oh, that's procedure. I need some feedback from you. So there's a lot of conflict at the fare box that you guys create. The B, you guys spent a lot of money in advertising the flat iron flyer. You already had an established product that people were happy with, or somewhat happy with. But then you went and relabeled it, put a new sticker on it, and said, look, now we got a brand new service for you. And from a driver's side, I think you lied to people. You didn't really give them anything different. All you did was repackage an existing product. So to answer everybody's question, fare is required by the contract to state, and correct me if I'm wrong, that RTD has to have a fare. Right?
We want a fare, but we don't put you in a situation, and we're not asking you to put yourself in a situation where you're gonna get assaulted or conflict. That's why there's a button to push on the bus. That's why there's a security officer or a dispatcher or a controller that can help you with that situation. And as you mentioned with the Mike Meter example, there is technology that's being put on the buses right now that when you do call in, officer or control center can look into the bus, visualize everything that's going on, even speak to the person in the bus or in the train in this case, and deal with the situation and dispatch resources immediately. So I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
I'll come to one up.
But if you have one fare, so for the public,
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I'm hearing you on that. I'm just trying to get my hand around
yeah. The
history of
conflict,
that.
the conflict in history, yeah.
But the issue is, what I'm hearing is the fear creates more, and then issue. I know some people just get on the bus and say, I'm not paying today, right?
Yeah,
I get that.
most of it are.
All right. I'm sorry.
So if I could just take a moment to, because there are other folks who we haven't heard from at all, and so I just want to see if Kane or Jeff or Wayne or Ed,
No. No.
Sorry.
But
If you all want to say anything, I just want to be respectful.
As I was saying, if you had one fare structure,
Travis, you know.
you put $3.
Wait, pause, sir.
They're saying that there's, but there's a big.
But I didn't finish my thought, that's why I was continuing.
Okay.
If you want me to stop right there,
Go
then.
ahead.
When you finish?
Okay, if you had one fare structure, just throw a number out, $3. Okay, that $3 would get you anywhere you need to go throughout Denver without having to put any more in. It's a day pass. I mean, you can have discount and youth, but then there wouldn't be all this different regional.
And I'm not trying to get in, I know there was a fair committee
Yeah, the
to look
past
at all
program.
this stuff, and that's why I'm feeling the disconnect here, because I thought that whole group was there to try to address fares and making sure people who are youth or elderly or without means had access, so.
I will say, there's some information over here for you all, but the past program working group is what Mr. Ford is referring to, and they looked at like the youth there, they looked at the equal passes that you're talking about, neighborhood equal passes, and from that, they came up with the LIFT program, which is a reduction in fare for those who are in most need. The LIFT program is like to help you live to places that you need to. And so if you live at or below 185% of the federal poverty line, you qualify for an additional discount. So it's supposed to address those who are experiencing not a lot of money in their pockets and needing to spend that on transportation.
Which is insufficient, because in other cities, like, kids ride free during peak hours for school.
I say that, because I come from DC.
Yeah.
So everything is literally done on a card.
Yeah.
And school-age children, all the way up to, I think it's like, I don't know, their senior year, so probably like 18, they don't have to pay. They get on the bus, yeah, they just, they
tried it.
They, you know, it's supposed to get them to school.
I was also going to mention what you were talking about, I guess it's a bit program. ADAPT has discussed that with RTD in the past. The issue of having reduced fares for you because you're disabled, but not everybody who's disabled needs the discount. If it could be tied to your need instead, most of us who are disabled would still qualify. But then it would be less complicated than to have that additional disability discount in addition to because of need. It can all just be determined by need.
I know the board took deliberate action with the accessory versus ADA to make sure it wasn't double the fixed route this year. I know they're not going to contemplate that for beyond, but I know that would actually be the
And that's another issue, the cost of the accessory as opposed to, it's much more expensive than taking a bus. It's a lot more expensive than most of the cities.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you have to wait like for like a 2-hour time period? Or like a 2-hour?
And you have to also call the day before.
Right.
I wanted to speak on that too, because I also work with ADAPT. Well, one of the things we were trying to do was get like Lyft and the other one actually rides like a cab. And they don't have the accessibility like at nighttime. We could be without a ride all night long because there's no accessible rides. And Lyft doesn't have enough accessible vans and stuff to carry us around. And another problem we have is my disabilities are hidden. Like this morning, I couldn't walk for a couple hours until I got back together again. So my disability, so they don't recognize the disabilities we have, right? And so that's another thing we have, but we're still negotiating, like how are we gonna get people around in the middle of the night that they don't have accessibility?
And I won't get into all the details, but we're working with Lyft right now, and we're working with the taxi companies right now to look what we can do to fill in the gaps. We've got some RFPs, request for proposals out for it right now, because we're looking at how do we redesign paratransit services to be more responsive, so you don't have those waits, those call times. You get to your appointment, then you got another 2 hours to wait to get back. We're looking at seeing what we can do to cut into that, to make it more efficient, and to change the trajectory of how that service is running. So I can assure you right now, we've got that working.
And I'd strongly encourage you guys to talk to the autonomous vehicle people, because, you know, as a city representative, I don't want to see autonomous vehicles on the road if we're not trading something off of the road. Like, that adds to the issue of congestion, and we need our public transportation system to be coordinating with all of those innovations so that it actually fixes our problems instead of makes them worse.
And as you may know, we did run an autonomous vehicle for 6 to 8 months. And we're not really, there's just a lot of issues right now. And personally, I was in Ann Arbor where they were doing the studies at Michigan, the University of Michigan. And I'm not poo-pooing autonomous vehicles that are going to come at some point, but we're a long way from those to be where they need to be.
I have a question regarding the autonomous vehicles. Those are working class jobs. Where do we get jobs at? You know, you're pushing something that's going to take away from working class. So,
it's true, but they'll come whether or not we want them. And so what the smart thing to do is to figure out how do we lift the burden off of people who want a day or two in their week to see their kids grow up? How do we figure out how to do it in a smart way? Because that's a private company that's coming with or without our permission. And it's gonna make it worse, yeah, like scooters. It's gonna make it worse for the rest of us trying to solve the problems in a way that keeps people in jobs.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it's the autonomous vehicles that run 11 to 3 a.m. when, people are especially unsurly toward their bus drivers. And, the routes can't be maintained because there's not enough fare-paying passengers to pay a living wage.
But I'll also say, autonomous vehicles is not dealing with the elderly, disabled folks, and we need to think about it in that
It's a big
context.
picture.
Because you need people there.
And let's just get a wheelchair.
And that's why you have a deployment system that makes sense. Like right now, Accessoride should be getting luxury service for what you pay for that. And it's the worst part of public transportation.
I just have a quick question, and kind of piggyback on what a meeting I was in years ago with your the predecessor, Phil Washington, making a report about federal funding going during our RTD and the improvements. And I was in a meeting with a couple of RTD employees that write grants for your agency. What kind of federal funding have you been pursuing? What we have seen recently with BRT is that there was a grant that you guys got to study land use, and to actually a city contractor got a very nice award to write land use area neighborhoods. And I'm thinking to myself, that money, might have been made available. I mean, it's millions of dollars. Why wasn't that used? Why aren't we going back to nuts and bolts? It seems like that's what you guys need, is to really look at the basics. How do we get the basics right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all agree, and I, having been a writer all the time, and having to say, well, now I have a new job and I can't do that. And I'm seeing more and more cuts. I'm like, we need to go back to that model, because the presentation that was given to, and it was a presentation I was part of, that was given by Phil Washington, was demonstrating how federal funds were making a difference, and we were recruiting drivers, and we were making an impact because we partnered with the federal government, and we were producing buses and creating American jobs. And I'm just feeling like now we're just sort of like, trying to just kind of take care of this and this and this. It's very reactive and not proactive. And I get it. I mean, it's a very complicated system. You guys all do very complicated, important jobs, everybody at RTD. But what kind of partnership are you creating with the federal government? Is that deficient? And what can we do to support that, to make sure that you're getting every grant dollar that you can get? And that those grants that are being applied for are going to, for ticket enhancements, for things that create and take care of real conflicts on the ground, and that are benefiting workers. And maybe it's studying innovation. Maybe that should have been the grant approach. Let's study innovation, what we can do to make things better, and then how to get the resources to implement, versus let's decide to use the funds to consider how Denver can upzone areas. That maybe should be Denver's responsibility to figure out, and not take money away from RTD.
How much did we increase ridership last year?
With the new fare structure.
In terms of number of passengers, or number of trips,
I
rather?
think we've seen a little bit of a decrease in actually.
And then how does that compare to other cities?
If you look across the country, you're seeing a downturn in all areas of ridership. And you're only saying 2 people have equal passes out of 500 in your unit?
I'm saying in my building, I think it's probably about
2.
2. Everybody drives, even though we live like 2 blocks away from all the light rails and 6 different bus lines.
I'm mind-boggled by that.
And I looked, and I think there are maybe 4 buildings in all of Lodo and CBD that have neighborhood eco passes. There are a ton in Boulder.
And to your point, I know we're working on BRT right now in partnership with the city, and we're narrowing down the corridors and all that. Again, sometimes with new different administrations, money is not always, transit is not always their priority. So I would just say that a different attitude. I think we're still kind of struggling with where this administration is in support of public transportation.
There's not a lot of money for that.
Go to city council Monday night. Monday night, budget meetings.
But they're expanding highways. That's what the federal dollars are going for to the states, is to expand highways, not for transit.
Well, there was a award there was a funding opportunity that came out, and I don't know if you guys applied, because I saw the folks who got it, and it was for BRT, for ticketing enhancements, for all of that. And I think about 18 awards across the nation, so I don't know how many applied. There could have been 200, 500, or whatever, but Denver wasn't on that list, RTD wasn't on that list, and it comes out every year. So, and folks were getting like millions through that funding opportunity. So if you're,
To do what we need to do in Colorado, it's gonna be like billions.
Ask a question since you did bring up the current administration in Denver. I know conversations that I've had with the former council person and also the mayor, they were having talks about forming like Denver's own RTD.
They were interested in creating a
So
division
what is
of
the
transportation.
conversation? I mean, if they're
We're
looking at
starting our
creating
own
something-
Department of Transportation.
Yeah, where that kind of comes, or is this like, what's the collaboration? Because it seems like we don't like what you're doing, is what it seemed in just that brief conversation, let's create our own.
I would say that's the opposite. We meet with the mayor once a month. We meet with Ulyss from the city, and we're partnering on different types of services and corridors and potentially flex ride services and mobility as a service area zones. So I would say the collaboration is very strong. My staff, which is in service planning, are meeting with their staff regularly to talk about transportation opportunities. And they've made it real clear. They're not trying to be the transit provider, but there are things that they want to see and we want to coordinate.
Yeah, it's not about we want our own just because we don't have enough, we need more to add to it. And I think that is the plan here, because our needs are very different than everywhere else RTD serves.
So instead we're putting, as someone said, more being top heavy with RTD and more people, analysts kind of research
Denver's
where
top
those
heavy
dollars are kind of coming.
all the way across the board.
Yeah, it's like a duplication of where that kind of comes.
Well, but I also think though that in order for the city of Denver to almost like take a step back in time and go back to prior to the 1970s when the rail cars and everything were bought up by automobile manufacturers, tire makers and stuff like that, so they could be ripped out of the entire city and have cars replace them.
50, 60, that was all over the country.
For all of that to come back into our community, the city has to be top heavy for a little while to dedicate land, for example, what is a future where Colfax from Golden to Aurora is a lane of train, right? That can't happen without that top heavy thought processes, right? As far as what can be, right? I think about Colorado as another one of those roads where to go north-south is catastrophically different than going east-west. And so...
And I think top can mean different things, like administration isn't always the best type of top heavy, but engineers who are thinking through those structures, that's a different kind of top that I think is worth it.
The Denver approach of trying to have like parks within 5 blocks of each home, of having an RTD stop within 3 blocks of each home, then yeah, let's put the money towards that, because it's just a condition where it kind of comes. And yeah, I mean, it's tearing up light rail, different things, 50s, 60s, where that kind of came. We're back to daylighting rivers, it's the same as you see in the Greenway, where it kind of comes in flooding. So we went back to historic planning, because we keep talking in the 70s, but it was designed properly in the 70s.
And Boulder has an overlay that they do with you, right? Like the city of Boulder subsidizes, or county of Boulder subsidizes some of the routes that they do. And I was looking on the sheet there, unless I'm wrong, those are some of your most high ridership routes as well. Do you think there's a relationship there in terms of like the fact that they're putting that money in that encourages that ridership?
Well, they encourage their whole community, but they have to too in a lot of ways because there's expensiveness to live there, right? And people coming in, coming out, so they have to really think about transportation differently because of the lack of housing and availability.
Getting pretty expensive here as well.
Yeah.
To shorter travel distance.
Is the city looking to do that at all, like the city of Boulder did, to improve their service?
Yeah, they started a Department of Transportation. There's no funding source for it. So who knows what's gonna happen with it? That's the executive branch of government that is deciding that and controlling it. We have very little information about what the ultimate goal is with that department.
In communities where EcoPass was offered, Boulder is one of them, Netherlands is another one. Not too sure about Longmont. I think they have.
Longmont has free, they're just.
Oh, they're just
Within their city.
within their city, but Netherlands has an EcoPass of the whole town. So have you seen an increase of ridership because of that program?
Particularly Longmont?
Well, like Netherlands, Boulder, everywhere where there's an EcoPass program where everybody's able to just get on.
I think Longmont's
standard
doing pretty
card.
well. I would have to double check on the Boulder. I think that does pretty well because of the need and because that's kind of how people get around given the constraints that environment creates.
Well, I know during peak hours, there's lots of times the buses about Boulder going into Denver are standing room. Going to the airport, standing room.
And it doesn't matter how many, like, because you can run every last FF, and you will have a standing room only on an FF. And it is crazy.
And that's a dangerous situation for the
And I
riders.
don't do standing room because of that
And I
safety
don't
concern.
either.
I don't do standing room. So if there's no more seats, then unfortunately, I have to let, some people have to wait because I have to consider safety as my number one priority. And I don't allow people to stand going all the way from Denver, especially all the way to Boulder.
Where the standing room issue happened on the Longmont to Denver buses was the service cuts that they had under Phil Washington. Before Phil Washington and those service cuts, there was much more service in Longmont. So that's been an issue for a while.
Yeah, and Longmont has been complaining about the lack of attention that RTD's been giving to it.
I can assure you, we've been in a very robust discussion.
And
I know,
they're
but
gonna
this
be
is past
transferring
administration.
buses.
But,
I'll tell you that now.
because this is more than just a Denver issue. The correlation between rail and buses, I see that the only difference in between them is that the rail is dedicated line, where the buses go in and out the neighborhoods. And some of the travel time could be dealt with if, and I know this costs money too, but if we had dedicated bus lanes where we don't have to be in traffic, that would cut down some.
Does that also probably increase safety for the drivers?
And I know that RTD has feeder routes to the light rails, but there's communities out there that are been built in the last 5 years that's not getting service. So there'll be one person in the car and congest the roads even more because we're not. I know RTD is a district, so Weld County is a part of that, and maybe some of the answers is increasing the districts because of the communities that are being built outside of the district are still driving into the district. They're driving into Wagon Road and taking the 120X and loading that up with standing people going down I-25.
And I think you make all relevant points. I think a lot of this is going to be addressed through the Reimagine RTD because that's really a focus about how do we deliver service, how do we do it differently, what the next 50 years is going to look like, if our infrastructure is right, do we have placement in the right areas, all those things are going to be part of that study.
And I know that communication is another big part that you mentioned that.
Absolutely.
I just kind of wanted to throw an idea out there, as far as maybe like trying to prevent cuttage or maybe not so much. But each division has maybe anywhere between, I know I'm out of plot, and we have about 7 supervisors, every supervisor holds a CDL license. They get off on their 3 days. Why can't they mandate to drive a bus a day?
We've been utilizing supervisors in a pinch, sometimes even trainers. So we have made sure that we use whatever resources are available. It's not a consistent way to operate your business, but we have not been shy about pulling those resources in.
Because I stay down in Bear Valley, and the main bus that I would deal with is the 76. And you always find a supervisor driving to help with their shortage. We have supervisors that sit in a desk and they twiddle their thumbs and are on their phones, they can help out, help take some of that stress off the bus. They get off 3 days, they have 3 days off. So allow them to mandate if it's not even more than doing a trip in the afternoon.
I have asked to come in on weekends and drive, and I've been turned down, so I just thought I'd let you know.
You've been turned down?
Yeah.
Because of her position.
Yeah. They do have a CDL. I am a driver.
All right, well, I need you some work real quick.
I have tried more than once, over and over.
All right, well, let me look into that personally.
I have tried. I said, I can
have
do.
witness that she's at least tried to take like some special events.
Let me look into that.
They said I had to be trained, and it's funny because one of the times I've asked, it was the week after I pulled out a bus, because I volunteered to do Labor Day parade. And I'm like, so I didn't need to be trained to drive for free, but I need to be trained.
Oh, we can rectify this, no
Get
problem.
paid.
Okay.
Can I ask one other question? This is my ride card. In order to get it, I had to go on the website, I had to fill out a bunch of forms, and then they mailed it to me in the mail. If I were in San Francisco or New York or I think Chicago or most other major cities, I could walk into a CVS, I could walk into a terminal, and it would spit one out. Why is that not?
I think we need to do more with different outlets. Where do you go now? CVS, you said?
I mean, I'm saying, there's a Walgreens or whatever.
I think we need to establish more places where that can be done.
Is there any?
Well, today's your lucky day because I have one with me for you.
I have one already.
Your point is the technology and being able to get
Right,
it.
I mean, it was 10 years ago that you could walk into anywhere in San Francisco and buy the Clipper card.
Exactly.
So,
All right.
and this is new, so I guess.
Of course, we do have it on our phone now, right? I mean, my monthly pass is now on my phone.
Yeah, but this is a tap per, as Candi was saying, this is the tap per
The whole
cost thing.
having it on your phone, it's all fun and games and it's good until your phone is dead. And then you can't pull it up.
That's true.
And
That's
then
true.
I have to read that one that says, well, then I'm sorry, but you have to pay again because your phone is dead.
Do you get a lot of that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
And I think that I like the monthly on my phone because the paper is easy, it's not replaceable.
Yeah.
The low-income card is an issue too. Think of how they have to get it. They have to go online, they have to go, and they, different places. You're talking a homeless population, you're talking a displaced population, and you're making it
Okay.
difficult.
I mean, I got that noted.
And
But your point is working on getting, how can we be more detailed?
Yeah.
Were there changes starting January 1? I just came back in from Miami, and I was there like a good month and a half. And our transportation was free. We had a trolley that took you everywhere. You could go into like Commerce City, Thornton, everywhere surrounding areas, West Transit over. They told you they were real good. Plus, I'm just trying to understand, they were all stewards. So do our bus drivers, are they recommended like stewards? You know, like stewards for the bus, for I don't know, they're not called RTD, but say we have RTD, our RTD drivers are also stewards, where they're like maybe community liaisons who come in and they're supporting the RTDs. They're stewards of the high schools that say, hey, we need to take more RTD, or stewards. You could be stewards to Russia. So you could be a steward, but they were all stewards there, that they were trained to give people information about where they could go in Miami for free. But it was free, and I also was in Seattle as a caregiver there, and it was back in the day, but that was also free transportation, also.
Yeah, the downtown, I'm
surrounding-
from Seattle, so I
Yeah,
know.
so it was free. So why can't we offer, besides just the 16th Street Mall, the trolley's free, right? Why can't we offer free transportation in surrounding areas where I know some kids walk to school because they have more than one person in the family? Property dictates a lot to us when we're talking about transportation. And a lot of kids are forced to to walk to school, not being able to get lunch or breakfast or stuff. And so transportation plays a big part in our communities. And when the bus, because even this is a perfect example, they took some of our major bus stops away from us from the train. One of my friends is on the Smith Road, I think she has to walk like 8 blocks disabled, and sometimes she gets late to work because they stop them. The areas are taken away from us in the poor communities. Do we see that same thing happening up in Cherry Hills? I mean, I just have a question about, it's gotta be people over profit, and it's always profit over people. So when are we gonna start looking at the system where we have to look at how are we gonna, who are we trying to work with? Who are we dealing with? Because what's being affected in my community, this community right here, is mostly people of color. Not the people that moved in here, that have access passes or a technicon or whatever kind of pass you got, right? I mean, we don't get them kind of passes if we live here. We're sleeping in the street, a lot of us. We don't have access to that, so property dictates a lot to us. And when they come in here and say, wow, now we really get a bad way, so we need to start cutting off some services. Well, how many services are you gonna cut off from us? Because when we want services go to Montbello, because the working class people in Montbello needed to come into work too, we didn't get that for years, and I'm not even sure we're getting it now, because I'm not that worker no more. I'm a disabled, because on the job I was disabled, and I'm still being like harassed sometimes about being on the bus because I don't have that discount ticket to show visibly that I have it on me. And so, I mean, so property dictates a lot to us when it comes to transportation too, and gentrification. So we don't have access to echo passes and stuff like that. More than one of our kids, like I take time out to give 7 of my grandkids rides to school because they're getting their buses now to school. Our school was closed down right here on Gilpin for them to open the school for the gifted kids to come over here, so the kids that were being bused now, we have to transfer them over here the way we can, because that transportation is not given to us again. So when there's cuts and cutbacks, it affects us in our community, mostly people of color. So there's got to be some kind of a discussion on how we're going to be able to work this out.
Right, and that's where the equity and other issues come into play to ensure that we are looking at the whole system and disenfranchising groups of people.
And I think too that these cuts are usually affect poor people and people of color more than everybody else. And as I said, I want to make sure that the disability community has a voice. A lot of us are also people of color, and most of us are poor because of our disability. So we're affected by these cuts a lot more than the average person.
Can I ask a question about the disabled pass in a different part? I was talking with someone that's a service provider doing resource navigation with Hope Communities, and she was saying that come January 1, there's a lot more documentation. You have to have there's some new forms, some new requirements that are even more complicated.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Are there some changes to being able to apply and have your disabled pass card starting January 1st of this year? And did it add more complication to what you were talking about, what you had to go through to get one?
If so, I haven't heard about that.
Accessorite is hard to get,
I know,
just generally.
Accessorite.
It's too
I
hard.
need to talk with Amber this
Yeah.
week and see what she was talking about. She was saying that there's some changes kind of coming to it. She's a resource navigator with Hope Communities, which affordable housing in the community. She mentioned that we were talking about.
I can check into that. I know that we work with Easter Seals right now to go through the certification process.
And it sounds like, I mean, it's a huge burden of what you were saying, with just all the stuff, and the different kind of things, and especially being, disabled, being homeless in different kind of parts. When you put somebody through 14 different steps, you're really excluding them. And especially if talking about cutting service on Smith Road and getting a rescue mission, we're going to put everybody out in this industrial place where there's no one. Yeah, that's why your halfway houses can't be anywhere.
Right.
except industrial, we want to cut those services, so we're trying to reintegrate you and push you out to the fringes that we're trying to grow into.
And excessive riding has left a lot of people out on the street at night, all right? Don't show up, don't come back, waiting 3 hours to get a ride back from the doctor. It's really hard.
How long does it, what is the process and the timeframe for getting, like I did say, getting qualified for reduced?
It took
Service.
me myself a year.
What?
Like a year. To get the doctor to give me papers saying that I should be, I'm disabled now.
To be able to get the discounted fare
It
with
took,
RTD?
it took my mom 2 years because they got denied, and then we had to fight again.
In regards to being disabled
Oh,
and
yeah.
being left out there, if you do call the Denver Police Department or the police department in the city that you're in, they will contact dispatch at RTD and send, they have the loop extras that's there, because when I've done the loop extras in the middle, because I've done an overnight loop extra, I have been out plenty of times to pick up someone that in the disabled community that's.
And I'm also talking about Denver to Lafayette. We have some of our DAP members that go to Lafayette. There's a lot of times they can't even get that bus to go to Lafayette, much less accessory. So there's that discrimination with people with disabilities. So we've been in the struggle 40 years just trying to get them to recognize people with disabilities.
So when you say that you're, like, you can't get that bus, is it because of fare?
The time, like, you could get this bus, but it stops running at 6:30. The next bus ride's not gonna come, they're overloaded, we only have 5 buses and they're all being used. So that kind of scenario, we've been caught on train stations where we didn't get really transit over.
Like she said, that's what we have spare buses, we have operators that run spare buses. Like, I've gotten calls to go and get a wheelchair and go take it to somebody at the hospital, or they got sent to the hospital and I needed to go and take their wheelchair, some things like that. So that's what the spare buses are for. Like, if you can't, especially if your mode of transportation was RTD getting there, then yes, it is our responsibility to get you back. And so you just have to call, make that call and say, look, I'm stranded, I took one of your buses, or your accessory route hasn't come back, and I've been waiting, then they're gonna send that bus for you.
Is the only way to get that is to call the police, or can we call?
You can call RTD, the 303-299-6000.
Yeah, this is after hours.
But they don't even have any phones.
Okay, so yeah, if you call,
It's complicated, it seems easy, but when you need,
yeah, like I
when you're
said,
disabled, you're stuck.
yeah, I know they've received calls from the police departments in the cities, and they contact dispatch who sends us out.
We need like a mass public education campaign, because, not the people who are on Accessoride, the elderly, they don't have phones. Like, my grandma was left out back here at the Vita for 2 hours with no phone in the night. And it's like, what are they, the regular people, we don't know, because people don't want to talk to someone homeless. People don't want to lend somebody their phone. And so, like, the general public needs to know how to help our neighbors.
And then we're scared to ask.
Yeah.
So,
Thinking about the service cuts, just a quick question. What percentage of, like, obviously, I don't think
We're
there's.
talking about service, we're hearing.
Everything, yeah, sure, obviously. Yes. I don't think there's a single route on RTD that actually, like, makes money in terms of it being, everything's subsidized to some degree, looking at that graph. What percent of RTD's revenue comes from commuting versus general transportation and some of the sort of accessibility and broader access to transit services that we're talking about? Because obviously a large part of it is people getting to work and getting home from work. What's that breakdown look like? And when we're thinking about service cuts, are we thinking about service cuts to general access to transit or to commuting?
Well, I think we have to look at everything. Right now, I think the last comment that I heard the CFO mention is that there's about a 30% farebox recovery. Depends on the mode, whether it's the commuter or local service and all that. In some cases, it may be as high as 50, like the airport service and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
There are some data points that either are here or I can get you that breaks it down on a pie chart about what they do. So I'm not sure if I've answered that.
Just, I guess what I'm asking is, in a broader sense, are we generally thinking about service cuts that'll impact people who are trying to get to work, trying to get home from work? Or are the service cuts going to impact people who are trying to get around?
I mean, but how do you know? Cutting service, period, is the inconvenience to everybody. Because we have buses that some routes actually run all day and all night, they don't stop running. So you can't say that you want to cut a route, because they're just riding, but there are people that has to be to work at 2, 3, 4 o'clock, or they're just getting off at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So how do you suppose they're supposed to get to work or not? Yeah.
I wasn't trying to make a judgment about.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that you're judging.
Just-
I'm just saying that, people, like, in this society, in this generation, nobody works 9 to 5. Everybody, there's overnight work. I've had to work overnight.
Sure.
I've even driven the night hours, and I've been pretty busy, like I've done the 0, all the way out to Highlands Ranch. And I picked people up, and I've had a bus full of people by the time I left out of Highlands Ranch, because they're just getting off of work. This is 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Versus if you go down Colfax, most people are trying to party or whatever not, but there are some people, like we have mechanics that stay out on the road. It depends on that 15 that comes in at like 3:15 in the morning, because they still have to get down here to get to work.
And to your point, I can't prescribe one factor or another. It's going to be multiple factors.
Sure.
Obviously, complying with federal guidelines around equity and the service plan, the standards that we have in terms of service. So there will be a number of factors that will go into anything that we propose.
Thank you.
Just have a quick question. How does someone get a pass for a low-income person who's not disabled?
Go through
You have to
social
go
service.
through, because I heard that you guys have changed that. So they don't go directly to RTD anymore, so they have to go through that. And how does, how long does that take? Because we all know peak always has delays.
There's a form and a process for that.
Okay.
That might be what Amanda was talking about.
But this is actually ties to
How long does that take? Do we know? Like,
this guy's comment.
I'm hearing it's,
So last, yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm hearing it's going pretty quickly. I think the report that we got at the last board meeting, there's quite a few that have gone through the process.
But how long is it possible?
They said it's about 2 weeks that folks would, from the time folks apply until they actually get their card in hand.
And so it's like the same with disabled, once they have their SSI determination. it's
I
2
can't
weeks.
hear you.
With SSI, once they have the determination for disabled, does it take 2 weeks after they prove that to get their
I
card?
have to ask.
You don't automatically get it for disabled. So there,
It was saying the Medicaid card on here,
There's like criteria that you
65
have.
years.
for accessoride, it's a so
Yeah.
are you just
I'm
talking
confused,
disabled pass, a discounted pass, or accessoride?
I'm talking about how long does, once you have your documentation, how long does it take RTD to pass through, especially accessoride, disabled, it's a different kind of card?
There are different layers. Like accessoride is a whole process where you have to make sure you're disabled enough that you can't get to the closest bus stop.
Right.
So you have to be recertified the same after, if you went through disability, so that's a huge, just human
It's like
dignity issue.
your doctor has, your doctor has to say there's a disability there. Because everybody can go in there and say, well, I'm out, I'm kind of crazy, I can't, do this. No, they have to give you the paperwork to say, what is this disability? Like, my disability is different than Ed's, and his disability will give him an accessoride before I could get an accessoride. So it's all different levels of what.
But that's not an
But it
RTD
takes time.
service, right?
We
The X-Ride is a subsidy of
we
RTD.
contracted out.
But the discount card is what you're referring to, the,
Well, I'm referring to all of these on a customer service standpoint, of the point of entry of coming to these services.
If you give me your name and no, I can get that information for you. I don't know for each area you're talking about how long it
It's just
takes.
like for like the regular pink card, like the little pink card, like you go down to the Lake Street office. But if you're just doing, like, say maybe because you're like 65 or older than that, you can just show your Medicaid card, or you can even show your driver's ID. You don't have to worry about having that card. You just have to have something stating that you're 65 and older. Now, if you have a disability leave, like she says, but you're able to walk to a bus stop, then yes, you will have to have that pink card. But for somebody who can barely walk, maybe like a quarter of a mile, then yes, you will have to have an accessoride, and those are different layers, and those depending on the nature of the disability, is gonna take time because they have to go back and forth with the doctors.
But-
So, I mean, my curiosity is, these are the most disadvantaged that need to be getting to healthcare, to different things, the doctors for quality of life. You have to sit for 2 hours at the back of the Vita of where that kind of came, you're diminished. This is probably a large population that really needs to be served better of where it kind of comes. So I'm tracking like the customer service level, at the entry point of the time of where it kind of takes. Is one of your outcomes of reporting your responsibility to the community of where it kind of comes. When I hear someone at 2 hours, and I'm talking about someone at work, it's the homeless, it's the disabled, and being able to connect to services and points that lift that kind of part up. That's very, very important on this because their life of getting from somewhere to anywhere to food and everything is dependent on that transportation. And the dignity and the quality of service of where that comes from, I mean, that's where it just triggered is there a problem here kind of with the community, and which is why I'm here asking
Kind
this
of
part, but I'll
hard, we
give my
have a
comments.
caregiver. So that's what makes it hard, because I could go on, and a lot of times the bus drivers recognize somebody with a disability, and they'll let you have your caregiver with you. There's a lot of times you'll get on the bus, and I need a caregiver, and they don't recognize that. They want to see something from the caregiver that says they're a caregiver, you know, and so there we got another problem there, because then now the caregiver has to pay to get on the bus.
You're getting questions about your caregiver?
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
just
gonna
talking
say,
like.
RTD is very strict on that.
Yeah,
We will
we're
lose our
not,
jobs.
we are not supposed to ask for documentation. If you say that's your aid, you dog, go ahead
Okay,
and
well,
have
I've
yourself a
seen,
good
I've
day.
seen
I'm
them,
not saying
but
you-
let's talk this again, because we're talking about RTD bus drivers, but I got on the bus before, and they weren't RTD bus drivers, they were contractor drivers. So then their treatment was.
The
We
same
don't
thing.
even know who these different people are until now that my grandson's working as RTD, then I'm realizing even their patches on the shirts and everything tells you if they're a contracted RTD or somebody else, right?
Mhm.
So we see that, but I'm talking about, I've been on the bus before with somebody, caregiver, and they said, no, we want to see that you're the caregiver. So it's because sometimes the bus drivers, the ones that are having that opportunity to say, no, you can't get on unless you have a card.
The rule is, if you say let's say I'm the person getting on the bus, and I say she's my caregiver, the operator doesn't ask
Push the
any
button, stay
questions.
No ifs, ands, or buts. You just go have a
That
seat.
is a terrible offense, trust me. Trust me.
So one thing that I've heard, kind of putting together the idea of more access points to buy repetitive use passes that are persistent to me, is that difficulty of getting the repetitive use pass that's consistent to me if I'm in the low income, disadvantaged community categories. And I know, like, you know, an RTD has flush with passes that they're giving rides out because they end up on the street, right? So you get,
Say that again.
so service provider, and I'll just pull like let's say a Boys and Girls Club or United Way or Metro Care Ring has got passes, right? And so you can tell that sometimes because they'll be flush on the street, the one rides, right? So it's a methodology of the book. So there's different ways to buy passes or to get paper passes, and in the same way that we can get printed cards that I can reload. And other cities do this very well, so that I have my own card for getting on and off the bus. Instead of giving the unhoused or the low-income communities paper tickets per ride, and a way to create less arguments and all that stuff, and the confusion of different passes and everything, is to come up with a standardized cards, right? So if all the agencies have the capacity to do the paperwork and the process, it's centralizing the assistance of services to the locations where they go and where they're already at, instead of making them travel to one specific location to get there. If I live in Aurora, why do I want to come to downtown Denver on Blake Street to get my disability pass card? I want to go to the service provider where I get my assistance in Aurora or Thornton or wherever. And that is consistent with the idea of the limited amount of places where I could buy an eco pass. And realistically, if I don't live in a community or I work at a place where the Eco Pass is available, my option is to go to the grocery store until they run out or buy one on my phone monthly, right? So you have 30 different fare options and methodologies, right? Because I can buy paper day passes, paper discount passes, there's cards, there's my Eco Pass. And so if you're gonna look at those ways to update the infrastructure where somebody has an effectiveness to buy a permanent card for themselves, then that process should translate to the low-income communities so that you're not just passing out paper tickets where bus drivers, need to see an ID. Why do you have a discounted fare? Why are you trying to pay a cash fare? Give them that card. And I believe the most expensive as well.
It really isn't.
I wanted to ask if we've talked a lot about security, and threats that y'all face as operators, and then the security officers / police officers on the bus, sort of making sure that we're all paying our fares. But I also wanted to bring up a solution that public libraries have adopted. Public library in San Francisco started it, and Denver has adopted this. They've hired social workers so that in downtown Denver they were experiencing a lot of overdoses happening in the bathrooms of the libraries, and obviously that's not something that you're actually trained in library school. And so rather than increasing security, or maybe in addition to increasing security, they also employed social workers so that they could give folks access to what they needed. And you were talking about having this system where, or maybe it was you who was talking about drivers being able to push a button and then a supervisor or security person.
Not supervisor, security person.
A security person could kind of Skype into the bus and see what was happening. A lot of times, I read the 15 every day, and in a lot of those situations, it's people who are experiencing homelessness. It's people who are using drugs and experiencing withdrawal or a variety of situations. And it doesn't seem like security would be a de-escalatory situation on the bus. And I'm wondering if we employed social workers at RTD to deal with the safety of drivers, if they could be a resource for drivers so that, when they're in a situation that they don't know how to deal with, there are people who can address things right away and also give folks other resources, in the community, right?
Just a comment, I guess, to your point. I know there's a lot of folks out there with mental health issues, and not everybody has the skill sets to deal with those kind of issues. I know actually Michael Washington and others are working on a pilot program that may incorporate people that have the skills, social workers and all that, because even law enforcement, that's still an issue. I come from Seattle, where they have homeless rampant all over the place, and I hear stories all day. So it's a lot of things that we're talking about in the industry right now. I also talked to somebody in LA recently at one of the transit systems. They've been deploying social workers or people who can help deal with the mental health issues,
right,
because there's just a different skill set,
right,
different recognition. So I think it's something that we are actually trying to pilot.
Cool. And another thing that the library does is they hire peer advisors, so folks who have maybe gotten resources from the library related to homelessness or other things that they're dealing with.
You said this is in San Francisco right now, what you're saying?
It's here. It
No,
started in San
the
Francisco.
okay.
But it's here, it's downtown.
Downtown right now?
Yeah, it's at Central Library, because Central Library is the de facto day shelter for the city and county of Denver, and the bus system is also a de facto shelter. We see people riding them all night long, back and forth, because that is a safe place to be
So they
in
bring them
comparison to other places.
Do they bring them somewhere?
They're in, no, they're in the
The
library.
social workers would work within the
They're
library.
in the
So-
library
so-
system.
Yes.
And all the librarians are trained on,
Yeah,
and other like sort of trauma
So you're,
training,
let me see if I understand you.
yeah.
Instead of having, police officers fly behind the door or the bus system, you want a social worker, a counselor.
Yeah, I mean, police officers aren't safe for everybody, you know, people of color and people with mental health issues are criminalized for being a person of color or being a person with mental health issues. And so having a police officer on public transportation can be triggering for a lot of folks, especially suffering from mental health issues.
Can I ask a question about your professional development for drivers? A lot of places, MHCD is great of offering mental health as first aid, but really of providing just like some professional development on the social skills, the different kind of parts of where that kind of comes to recognize and trigger and de-escalate that, because you are dealing with that, and to be able to offer, you know, that type of, you know, just professional development, that soft skill, that knowledge.
We do get training for that.
You do? Is it
We do,
effective?
it's, each case is different, and it really depends on how the operator is. Like, I can be a pretty calm person under fire, I dwell under stress, so I can de-escalate a lot of things. That's why I probably have not been assaulted, where you may have some that they know what they're supposed to do, but they react differently. So it's more of a fight or flight type of thing. It's more of, I guess, how that operator,
Yeah.
how it, you know, it just, what am I trying to say? I guess, how long it takes for them to perceive it
Yeah.
and to acknowledge it.
It's a Band-Aid of like a once a year, like, you know, 6-hour training. But inside of, say, do y'all have like driver meetings or different parts where you
We get
might have?
training every other month,
Every other month?
and it deals with a variety of things. So the next, like, we just got finished dealing with, like the Smith system and the ADA passengers and service animals. In a couple of months, they can, I don't know, they might decide that we might need to learn CPR or something like that.
Do y'all have like driver team meetings and weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly?
Say that one more time.
Do you have like driver, like team meetings, like bi-monthly?
No.
So you wouldn't have a chance to put that like on the agenda of where it is, so you can just kind of,
No, we generally don't know about a class until they say, here's your next class.
so y'all just come and get a schedule, this is where it is, and then you get scheduled for the class? So
Then we have to try to squeeze it in our already tight 6 days a week schedule.
how effective are those?
There's a Trailblazers guide too. They have a whole
It's a different part.
process
Yeah.
You
of
know,
things.
understand the nature of our job. Someone comes in, they pay their fare, they go to their seats. You know, we have to
That's the
focus on
nature
our
of the
work
job.
and we're keeping the bus on route. And so there isn't a lot of interaction with passengers unless something comes that's difficult.
But you also have to watch down the aisles and see what's happening with the passengers, especially on the 15th, so it's not just, you do have that dynamic energy inside that too.
There's a lot of the operators that have downers, they don't watch down those aisles.
Yeah, you don't
It's-
see that.
It can make it for a stressful day.
Yeah, I mean, it's why it's so hard to hire people to come into it and get 20 an hour. You know, it's not something people.
Well, I know that,
tolerate.
as far as security, there has been discussed that, we've seen studies at Walmart where self-checkout lines theft has decreased because they put a monitor right above the checkout. So it was suggested, and we might still be looking at it, but having a monitor so that when people walk on the bus, they see that they are on camera. So that to use that to de-escalate things even before they start.
Cameras on the buses.
I know, but there's no monitor on there showing the passenger.
But they
getting
already,
on the bus.
but they already know from the time that they get in front of that door where the first set of cameras are, they know that they're being recorded. People act because they choose to, and they don't
But they
care.
also know that the cameras were in the store, but they still stole, but escalated it by having a monitor. I just don't.
And an operator would rather have a shelf than, RTD spend the money on a shelf than a monitor, I can tell you that.
No, I do not want to put in the glass.
I do. I
The
do.
majority
I don't want people spat on me. I don't want bodily fluids. I don't want to have to risk me losing my temper to defend, to have to defend myself. I don't like
But you
driving
wouldn't
the
have to
mall,
do that if you
but I
didn't
drive the
offer
mall
that.
because I don't have to have that contact with people.
I-
And that's
I-
sad.
I really, go ahead. No, I have a question. The city says that they have these outreach workers that are working on homelessness, and they're going around and contacting homeless where they find them. Do you ever see them at RTD stops? Do they ever board the bus, and do they ever, because to me, that is a large portion of people who come in and out who have mental health challenges. You're experiencing homelessness, you know, periodically or continuously. And we're told that we've spent millions on this, and you're supposed to be out contacting people, and I think if there was a presence there throughout the RTD system, at least within the city and county where we've invested a lot of resources, on those routes where you see a lot more of that, that would alleviate some of the issues. And if you're not ever coming into contact with any of them, then clearly they're not going there. They're going out maybe.
They're going underneath the bridges, they're going to the places where someone that's homeless can actually be harmed. I've driven the night owl, which is the 15, and at that time it started at 7 p.m. I got off at 5 in the morning, and I did this a few years ago, and I did it for 2 votes, and everyone thought I was crazy. But I can tell you what my night was like, it wasn't unsafe. But the majority of the people that got on the bus were homeless people. They slept from the beginning of my route to the end of my route. I turned around, they had to get off because I turned around in the division. They'd walk across the street and like, when we pull out, they would sleep all the way back downtown to the kickoff point and do it again all night long. You know, most of them get on, they sleep. If you don't bother them as an operator, you're safe, they're safe, and we're all good.
To that point, I wonder, sorry.
Well, so I just have to be completely honest, someone else is renting out this space at 1 o'clock, so at some point we have to wrap this conversation up, but go ahead.
To that point, and to someone's point earlier about training, I wonder what training has been offered or what could be offered for like cultural competency for serving different communities, different routes. You know, driving the 15 is different than driving the 6, is different than driving the 12.
We get that training.
You do?
We get that training. Basically, what they tell us to do, basically in a nutshell, is just let them ride. It's just let them ride. They don't have fare, okay, let them ride. Their transfer expired, okay, let them ride. They're fussing because they didn't pay and they want to transfer it, fine, give them transfer it, let them ride. That's basically, that's supposed to ensure our safety, and sometimes it still doesn't go that way. And then like she says, you know, you have those people, because I've driven light out, and they want to go from A to B. They just want to sleep and be either cold, you know, they want to be warm, or they want to cool down. Because I always have to take my safety into first, so when I get to the end of the line, I said, you have to get off. And do I feel bad about it? Yes, but I still have to, you know, think about my safety at the end of the day, and the fact that I have 4 kids at home that I need to go back home to. But yeah, we do get that training. It's just basically a lot.
Really appreciate you all coming here on a Saturday morning. That was supposed to be an hour, and now it's been 2 hours. So thank you all for your time and your dedication. I hope we can continue to have these discussions and continue to have this dialogue as we're talking about Reimagine RTD, as we're talking about how do we better optimize our system. One of the things that I'd encourage you all to do is attend our board meetings. We have public comment this Tuesday, actually at 5:30, 1600 Blake Street. And so it's important for me to hear as the director, but it's also important for other directors to hear from you all. So show up and feel free to reach out to me on cards. And again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us for this fantastic meeting. Have a wonderful afternoon.